Hey guys, it's Debbie, and I have my friend Brad Kearns back on the Low Carb Athlete podcast today to talk about chronic stressors, acute stressors. When is something that's a stress in our body that is a positive? It's not a negative, as when we are addicted to busyness and never shut off our stressors. We're on the go and we just live life as a race. But Brad has been a part of my journey. We've podcasted many times over the years, and I shared my story on his podcast on the Primal Endurance Blueprint on the Life is Not a Race. It is a journey in my holistic method program, and really always connect with Brad because he's fun to chat with as Brock and my other podcast buddies. So you'll hear him on the show because there's always something new to talk about. And if you've been following Brad Kearns, he's Mr. Energetic, and he started doing this cold plunge water cold thermogenesis last few years. And he does this 5-minute plunge into a chest freezer with 36 Fahrenheit, or he goes into Lake Tahoe in the wintertime. And Jimmy Moore's been doing this too. And of course, my brain always thinks, all right, is that sustainable? Is that beneficial? When are you doing some acute hormetic positive stressor too much that it creates a negative effect? And so we're going to talk about that. I'm going to ask him that question. And I'm always looking at what's sustainable. How can we perform our best in life and our favorite sports as we age up? And as I strive to live my best life and feel my best and look my best in the second half of my life, I'm all about finding these different biohacks to improve the aging process. I'm not a big cold person. Obviously, I moved from Seattle to North San Diego, inland from Solana Beach a year and a half ago, and I really thrive in the sunshine and I love to have warm weather, but it is cold here as we're recording. It's March and it's, 35, 45 degrees in the morning. So I do go outside in the morning for a run, or if it's a walk day, and just get outside. And I try not to overdress and just let myself be cold. I don't like putting the heat on in the house. We have a tile floor, so it does keep the house cool. So I just always have the house cold, and I sleep in a cold room, and I allow myself to be cold and heat up. So that's my version of a cold thermogenesis, rather than getting into a cold 35-degree tub, which I admire all those people for, but I am not ready to go buy one or make one because I don't think I'll use it enough because I'm already busy enough. But maybe I'll be sold on that after I talk to Brad, and we'll record a new podcast, Jimmy Moore, in the future, as he's all about his cold thermogenesis every day too. So Brad's also in pursuit of peak performance throughout his own life. He has created this optimized male hormone function called MOFO mission we'll talk about, and really work on, fasting. And as I have this theme this year on fasting, are we fasting too much? When is it appropriate to fast longer as an athlete, an aging athlete, and a female athlete? Because a lot of the information we hear out there for fasting, for keto, carnivore, is not always for the busy, high charging, high performing athlete that's driven and ambitious and maybe tending to do a little bit too much of everything already. So we need to take all this information we continue hearing out in our communities and dial it in for you, the unique individual that is not the same as everybody else. And what works for me isn't going to work for you. So we want to take all the information and then individualize it. So a personalized fitness, exercise, sleep, stress, digestion, all that type of lifestyle program. So I call this the holistic method: training, fueling, training, performing the whole you from the inside out to really be fit and healthy for life. So let's talk to Brad and dive into his morning rituals and talk about fasting. And I know he's working on carnivore and keto carnivore and done some books with Mark Sisson. They've done a lot over the years. So let's chat with him and find out something new today.
Can't hear you.
All right, trying this again. Brad is on the show to talk about how to be rad.
Oh my gosh, Debbie, it's so great to join with you again. We were catching up before we hit record. I've been married for 2 years. You're like, what are you talking about?
I know.
So I think it's been 2 years since we talked, but we had some great podcasts and of course, personal visits too. But we had great content. And now, of course, as always, your fingers on the pulse of the athletic movement on the planet. And we have important things to discuss.
I'm on a mission since I relaunched the show in 2022. And my focus has just been, let's talk about the endurance athlete fueling, training, performing with all these different trends out there. The information we get and hear about social media and different experts is for the metabolically damaged individual, not the high charging, high performing, aging athlete or the female athlete, because all these studies are done not only non-athletic people, but also not the female athletes. So we have to really individualize everything we're hearing about. So I'm on a mission to get everyone's opinion, talk to experts as yourself that really have dove deep into fueling and your training. And we'll talk also about your morning rituals I talked about in the intro.
Oh my gosh, that's a great setup because we have so much confusion and controversy, the onslaught of information. And so we're trying to wade through all these things. And a lot of people say, show me the science. I want to see a study that proves this. And I don't care what some guy with muscles on Instagram says. And I'm taking a step back even from that assertion, because a lot of science can be crafted to show the conclusion that you're looking for, especially when it's funded by someone who's looking for that conclusion. At the Gatorade Sports Science Institute says you need to drink sugar water throughout all your workouts. So I'm also, taking scientific conclusion with a grain of salt. And I prefer to look at real people doing real things, especially the elite athletes of the planet and how they're performing at the highest level. And Debbie, we go way back in the triathlon scene. And I remember way back when there was a lot of articles published in the magazine about a study showing that high intensity interval training will get you fitter than long, slow distance. And you don't need to spend all day out there. You just need to go hit it hard, because these subjects after 6 weeks improved their VO2 max by 27% by going and slamming on the bike every single day. And then you turn and look around in real life, and the greatest athletes in the world, not only in triathlon, but in all endurance sports, for the past 60, maybe 70 years, since Arthur Lydiard in New Zealand brought these guys to the Olympics, his runners, and they won gold medals and broke world records. They were all doing it with a tremendous emphasis on aerobic base building. So they were spending hours and hours and hours, comfortable heart rates, getting strong and fit and adapted, even to race something as short as a minute 44. Peter Snell, the great New Zealander who won the gold medal in the 800 meters, came off of running 100-mile training weeks and running up the sand dunes and all these crazy things that people didn't think about. So, there's an example of, you can get a lot of science to show that if you go really fast, you'll get fit quickly. But these are 6-week studies, and then they're not going to look at the person's, progression over time and the risks of overtraining and burnout and things that happen over the long term. Same with all the dietary research, like you mentioned. They're taking people off the street and starting them on programs with whatever it is, fasting or carb restriction. And certain people are way better candidates to benefit from certain dietary interventions versus someone who is depleting their glycogen daily by doing intense workouts or long distance workouts.
Yeah. So you always just go on and talk. There's like 10 things to unpack there, but let me back up. So I think, tying that into what I want to get into is your experience last few years. I know you've done some stuff, Paul Saladino, you talked a lot on your show and blogging articles about carnivore. And let's talk about your work with Mark Sisson, your books you've written over the last few years, 10 years, however long it's been now, I lost track, of going low carb to keto to eating whatever you want and intermittent fasting, and then going into carnivore, whatever order that is. But then what have you found from your own experiments and your different food plans you've tried with your workouts and matching your fueling with your lifestyle and your exercise program.
Oh, thank you. So I went on a rant the first time. So this time I'm going to really try to slow it down and look at some big picture insights that the listener can really take away and gain a better understanding and perhaps more simplicity in one's quest to eat in the most healthful manner, promote longevity, peak performance, recovery, all these things. And so, I'm kind of reflecting, especially from being in this game for so long and been writing nonstop. Thank you very much for that is now 14 years with Mark Sisson, and before that another 6 years. So I've basically had a book project on my screen for the last 20 years nonstop with no break. It's kind of crazy. So yeah, deep into this stuff. But really what it all comes down to is a few, major simple takeaway points. And I think the first thing that I should mention is that the first talking point when we get to diet is to eliminate the nutrient deficient, highly processed, toxic modern foods. And we don't need to talk about anything else unless we enter that gateway. So there's a checkpoint, just like at the border crossing in Mexico, down an hour or so from where you are. And you have to show your paperwork and your documents. And so, look, if we're getting rid of refined grains, sugars, and industrial seed oils, then we open ourselves up to tremendous health potential. And even extreme guys like Dr. Peter Attia, who was on my show, saying you're going to get 80% of your potential for longevity, peak performance, body composition. You're going to get to the 80% mark just by ditching toxic modern foods. Now, the final 20%, hey, probably a lot of people listening are at that 80 mark or 78 or 76, except for the Chuck E. Cheese birthday party last week. And then they're back up to 78, right? So they're hopefully already there where we're not consuming these processed foods. We're actually reading labels. We're making sure we're not pulling over at the rest stop to get some French fries and a hot dog. But before that, the rest of it's just folly and missing the point. I try to not be too mean to the vegan community, but it seems to be strongly associated with both planet sustainability and health. And so a person says, I'm a vegan, or I'm this, or I'm that, and they automatically seem to ascend higher than average. But vegan just means that you're not eating animal foods. Those are some of the most nutrient dense foods on the planet. But beside that, for a moment, it also doesn't preclude you from having a 7-Eleven Slurpee or a Butterfinger. So that's what I want to look at first. Is can you clean up your diet so we can have a further conversation about particularities and males and females and endurance athletes and people who are overweight and wishing to drop excess body fat and all those different doors and gateways that we can then explore.
Well, I've said that for years in nutritional therapy. As practitioner, we are taught the right food plan is eat real nutrient dense food that balances your blood sugar. Test question right there. False or negative. It's like, it's a little simple to just think about eat real food that comes from the earth that balances your blood sugar. And I think all the different food plans out there get really confusing. And I'm finding the keto world has gotten damaged as paleo did with all the processed foods. And ironically, this week I'm going to the Natural Product Show Expo West in Anaheim, which is going to be filled with the up and coming products that are going to be keto foods that have all the crap in it. So it is, just get back to basics and look at how your ancestors ate and get rid of the vegetable oils and all the toxic ingredients. But, you did some carnivore experiments on yourself. I think what is a big question is for athletes, if you're exercising, whatever time of the day, morning, afternoon, evening, how do you eat? And if you're a carnivore, are you fasting? I mean, I can't eat a steak and go work out, and I can't eat a high meat meal. I'm fighting with my Oura ring score. My deep sleep is crap when I eat high protein only at nighttime. So it's really individualizing it, but where, when, and how do you eat? And as a carnivore, do you more keto or just like whatever you eat, intuitive eating to balance your blood sugar? What's your personal plan?
So if we're like drawing a chart and we're heading down the path, And our first checkpoint is to ditch those toxic processed modern foods. I put them in three categories. Again, refined grains, refined sugars, and refined industrial seed oils. Now, the next goal, especially for me, and this is what I've been really focusing on, is to maximize the nutrient density of my diet. So whatever I eat, I want it to have maximum nutritional value rather than being an okay approved food because it's on this list, but it's not really that nutritious. And so that's why I created this chart called the Carnivore Scores Food Rankings Chart. You can see it at bradkearns.com. Download it for free. It's really handy. You put it on your refrigerator, but it basically ranks the most nutritious foods on Earth in a tiered manner. So you have like your most nutrient dense superstars are things like oysters, grass-fed liver, and salmon eggs, and those are kind of random.
They're all gross foods for a lot of us. So
right. So I mean, it's just trying to be kind of straightforward and say, look, from a laboratory perspective, liver is the most nutritious food. It's way more nutritious than steak, and it's way more nutritious than anything from the plant kingdom. So your kale smoothie or your giant salad or your mixed greens or your beets and carrots with cucumber on top, those things have health properties. People love those. They're lauded as healthy choices, but they don't hold a candle to something like liver. It's just how it is. Same with a pastured egg is way high ranked up on the nutrient density chart. Same with the oily cold water fish family. We call them the SMASH fish. That stands for salmon, mackerel, anchovies, sardines, and herring. And these just happen to be the fish with the highest levels of omega-3s and other health properties from the fish family, which is cool because those are inexpensive. Liver is extremely inexpensive. I just bought a huge load at the food co-op, and it was $6 for like a couple pounds of liver. Then I bought a tiny little steak for $21. I'm like, dang. Okay, so I'm trying to up my liver game. And you mentioned carnivore and that exciting movement that I really appreciate and I'm very interested in. I'm a good follower of Dr. Paul Saladino. I like what Dr. Sean Baker's doing with his Meat Heals movement. And it turns out that a lot of people have tremendous plant reactivity. And so when they exclude these seemingly healthy plant foods, they heal their gut and they get all these health awakenings. Now, that's not me. I never had a problem eating a salad or making stir fry, and I have done so my whole life in the name of health and improving my dietary quality. But when you break it down and you listen to a few hours from Dr. Saladino, he's going to get in your head because he's going to explain, look, the salad has some nutritional properties, but not nearly as much as if you sat down to a breakfast of steak and eggs. And okay, you want to get some carbs because you're an athlete and you have a sweet potato in there. Paul's big on eating honey because it has a lot of health properties and none of the offensive conditions that happen when you're consuming processed sugar. And so those are a fruit, of course. And so the variation can come and we can continue talking about all these little ideas, but I want to, like, as I said, go slow. So the step number one is ditching those toxic modern foods. And then step number two, for me, I'm answering your question. I'm also recommending this to everybody, is to strive to maximize the nutrient density of your diet. So what do I eat? I eat a lot of eggs. I eat a lot of steak. I eat a lot of liver. I make these power smoothies where I'm consuming raw frozen liver, a little bit of banana for flavoring and for texture, frozen banana as well, of whey protein. I'm making my own whey protein product that's going to be absolutely superior. It's coming out soon, so we get a little commercial during the show. But I'm trying to, get my protein needs met as my first priority because that's the first priority for survival and also for an athlete and an aging athlete such as myself. We need to recover. And so it's kind of like a high protein diet. You could call it that in comparison to whatever, with protein as the emphasis and on nutrient dense foods as the centerpiece.
Yeah, I think protein is a big thing right now. And I was laughing the other day that how the pendulum is always swinging. And now that all the keto people, well, Maria Emmerich's been talking about for a while now about protein optimization and Dr. Gabrielle Leon. And I just saw a post, email blog I get from Dr. Eric Westman, who's kind of the beginning of Atkins low carb keto for metabolic health. And everyone's now saying or pointing out that, of course, you go high fat, you forget about the other macronutrient protein. So now everyone's like, all right, don't forget to prioritize your protein. So I know some people say 0.5 to 0.8 grams of protein per body weight. There's Dr. Gabrielle Leon that's all about 1.0 times. So if you weigh 150 pounds, you should have 150 grams of protein a day. What do you guys say in your world? Or I know Paul Saladino talks about, I think he was one saying too, 1 gram and then match that with fat, 1 gram of fat per pound body weight. So it's a lot.
Listener, raise your hand if you have any freaking clue what your grams of protein are intake every day, or what an average meal represents. Not too many people are so deep into this that they even have an awareness. And I get into a busy life too, even though I'm writing about this stuff, and I can answer the question with, if I was pinned to the corner. But I first want to, paint this picture that when we choose the most nutritious foods, we're going to get sufficient protein. And we're also going to have that extremely high satiety factor that protein provides. Protein is even more satiating than fat. So when we talk about these risks of over-consuming protein, which has been a big issue. Keto people talked about it from the very beginning, because if you consume a lot of protein, it can possibly affect your ability to produce ketones. But this is now getting strongly refuted by the real experts in the field. And I follow people like Saladino and Dr. Tommy Wood and Dr. Kate Shanahan, and the risk of Rob Wolf is big on this too. The risk of over-consuming protein and damaging your kidneys and your liver. These come from research with unfit, typical modern citizens who eat way too much processed carbs, processed fat, and then probably whatever protein they're consuming. Their body is stuffed full of calories at all times. So all kinds of things are going to cause problems, and you're going to see stress on the kidneys, liver, whatever. But for the average person, you're going to be so satiated, and this is easy to consider. That have you ever stuffed your face and eat so much steak that you felt sick? No, you've stuffed your face with Pringles or popcorn or ice cream and said, oh my gosh, I so regret what I did last night at Chuck E. Cheese. But the high satiety factor of protein and the high nutrient density tells your brain that you have had enough. When you have that 4-egg omelet made to order at the buffet at Paris in Las Vegas, Nevada, 4-egg omelet is plenty. You're not going to go back and get another 4-egg omelet, but you're going to see people walking by you getting another slice of cheesecake and another brownie and so forth. So protein has this high satiety factor. And if you're not getting enough protein, you are going to feel like crap. Chris Kresser makes an excellent point that if you're under consuming protein, because the only reason you would do it is you're on some crazy restrictive diet where you're going against your natural instincts. If you underconsume protein, you're going to experience strong, intense cravings for high protein foods, and you're going to get emaciated, and your hair is going to start falling out, and all kinds of crazy stuff's going to happen. And yes, indeed, this does happen to people in the vegan community who are eschewing the major high protein foods in the human diet and so forth. And so I don't think that's a high risk for almost anyone, except for someone's on a freak extreme craze where they're doing the 28-day juice diet or whatever, juice and brown rice or whatever is going on. And so generally you're going to get your protein needs met. And if you're looking to optimize, Rob Wolf's epic quote that he gave me on an interview, I think about it all the time to kind of a nice soundbite. And he says, if you want to live longer, lift more weights and eat more protein. And that is really leading to, as this is kind of an aside, but preserving functional muscle mass throughout life is one of the key factors, maybe the key factor for longevity, because it's going to keep you safe. You're not going to fall. You're not going to get, into demise, and you're also going to be functional and strong. And the more lean muscle mass you have, the more functional and better your lean muscle mass is. It's directly correlated with your organ function, obviously, because when you asked to perform physical work, you're having your lungs breathe more air, you're having your heart beat, you're having your liver work harder. And so that that representation of having functional lean muscle mass also means your organs are healthy. And it also predicts that you're metabolically healthy, because in order to build muscle, you're burning calories and you're not overstuffing your face and things like that. So that's kind of the protein answer.
Yeah.
And I think that should put people at ease.
Well, we've talked a lot about that lately. And Rob Wolf, I had on my show recently, and just was re-listening to Dr. Gabby Leon, I interviewed 2 years ago, and really love just the message that we're getting out there finally, that as an aging athlete, or anyone aging, which is everybody, that we need to lift heavy things and eat more protein. And I really love what Rob was saying about longevity. And he has a great YouTube video presentation he did during COVID that was supposed to be at live conferences, but just how, not so much fasting, that the mTOR fasting to AMPK pathway, people get that yin and yang balance, that if you actually just lift more weights and ate protein, you'll still get a lot of health benefits. And that for athletes, I think they've gone to these extreme fasts and still exercise. I had someone doing this 3-day fast, I think once a month, but they're doing CrossFit each day. And, a lot of people just not prioritizing protein, because if you're doing an OMAD, or, even 2 meals a day, how are you getting, say, 150 grams of protein in your eating window if you're eating in a 5-hour window? So I started doing my own calculations in my macros and trying to count protein in 1 cup of bone broth, a protein shake, and a meal. Well, I'm full. I don't want to eat anymore. So it's really hard, getting some essential aminos and trying to, calculate how to get that much. It's really hard if you're doing 1-2 meals a day. So what have you guys learned with your 2 meals a day book and your personal research for athletes, if they're trying to get stronger, get leaner, and improve the aging process? How do we get more protein in without eating so much when because you're full, you're not even hungry?
Yeah, I think there's probably a fork in the road here, and the sign says if you want to reduce excess body fat, you head down a different road, and if you are at your optimal body composition, you head down a different road. And so those at the optimal body composition are probably very fit. They're working out a lot. There's skinny fat people. Dr. Phil Maffetone says 91% of the global population qualifies as skinny fat. So I'm not talking about someone who looks good in their evening gown, but they don't work out and they have a lot of visceral fat and they have not a lot of muscle tone. So we're talking about the fit athletic population at or near their ideal body composition has a whole different set of decision-making parameters than someone who raises their hand and says, you know what, I watch my diet, I'm working out, and I'm still really frustrated because I have 5, 10, 15 pounds to lose. And so for that person, fasting is going to be tremendous benefit. Any kind of diet where you're going into rules and guidelines and restrictions and regulations is going to help you drop excess body fat. So that could be like a compressed eating window. It could be restricting carbs in the spirit of keto. It could be the carnivore experiment, which is very, very effective for fat reduction because you're getting all the nutrition you need, you're getting all the protein you need, and you're on this really strict elimination diet where you can't eat anything except for animal food. So you're having steak and eggs and fish. And guess what? You're going to drop excess body fat just because of the restrictive nature of the diet. However, it's enjoyable and sustainable because you're eating these lavish meals. So I have a good plug there for people that want to drop excess body fat. I had this evolutionary anthropologist, Dr. Herman Ponzer, on my show. He's the author of this recent book called Burn. And his life's work is to contend that human caloric expenditure does not vary much during the day, whether you work out or not. It's kind of a crazy notion, but if our calorie burning is kind of fixed at an upper limit. And so if we do burn a lot of calories working out, we're going to turn down other flames in our life. We're going to be more lazy. We're going to have suppressed immune function in the example of an extreme training athlete. But the takeaway point, he said, is that any diet will work, and all diets are essentially a gimmick because what they're trying to do is to get you to consume fewer calories and be able to stick it out and not suffer from it, but not too fewer, because if you go on a crazy restrictive extreme diet, your body's going to turn down all these metabolic flames and you're going to burn fewer calories. And that's kind of the takeaway from the Biggest Loser program, where they've now done some good research over the long term on these contestants. And after 7 years, almost all of them weigh more than when they started the show. It's a just absolutely disgraceful, tragic story of people who are, the camera's on and they're doing all these things. They're torturing themselves. They're dropping weight really quickly. And then their body responds over the long term by turning up appetite and turning down desire to move and exercise. So kind of throwing a lot in here on this one, but it's this idea that we can hack our way to fat reduction is kind of true in a way, but not the way we think.
Well, I think it depends on your goal, as you're saying. It's like, if you want to lose weight, if you want to improve muscle strength, if you want to improve performance, maybe there's a slightly different plan. As we always say, there's not one size fits all approach, but just a template, a starting point, and then adjust as you go and course correct based on your individual life stressors, your schedule, like when you exercise, how you exercise, the intensity that day, if it's a rest day or if it's a interval or speed day, or if it's endurance day. So I really like to look at, okay, each day is going to be different for a lot of athletes. And then you can really map it out for the menstruating, cycling female athlete, figure out, okay, where does this all dial in even more for you at a specific level? The week before your cycle, you can add a little bit more higher carbs. And Dr. Mindy Pelz has tons of amazing information on that and what type of carbs to feed your progesterone hormones. And then when it is okay for a female athlete to do more of a keto. And so I think it's just so important that that's why, we do coaching, is to help people at an individual level take all this information and then apply it to themselves. And then, okay, let's look at your ancestry background. Let's look at your life schedule. Let's look at your sleep and workout, and then time your nutrition to your exercise. So with looking at, say, like a 2-meal a day plan for an athlete who's maybe exercising, for example, myself, speed run or run in the morning, and then I do master swim at lunchtime, which did you ever swim at Solana Beach? Seems like everyone used to swim down to Solana Beach that was ex-pro triathlete. And Peter Tia, I just heard, used to go there.
La Jolla, UC San Diego, and Carlsbad High, and in the ocean. Yeah. Great stuff down there.
Yeah. Seems like all these triathlon friends seem to know all my old triathlon coaches and Mark Allen and everyone. So anyways, when you are doing a 2-a-day workout, do you do 2 meal a day? What did you guys find out when you're doing your 2 meal a day book? Do you apply that to athletes?
Here's the thing. Humans respond really well to feast or famine pattern. That's what our evolution has designed us for, because our ancestors didn't have the choice of, should I have 2 meals a day or 3 or 1? I don't know. Oh, I got to go on a 15-mile hike to try to get some food for my clan, right? So we adapted really well to inconsistent eating patterns. And that's the essence of the wonderful health benefits of keto, right? When you're starving is the best way to avail the benefits of keto. Fasting, starving, your body starts making these wonderful energy-rich molecules. Your brain function is optimized and you're alert, and you can go for days, even if you don't have any food. In an emergency setting, which our ancestors faced for millions of years. And so we're really good at storing fat. We're really good at burning stored fat when our hormones are correct, when we need that energy, and we're good at making ketones. And so today, when we're looking at these busy, hectic daily schedules, we're trying to balance physical exercise with the rest and digest parasympathetic function, which is how we should be when we sit down and consume calories. We shouldn't be ever consuming calories on the go when our digestive system is not rested and ready to absorb the benefits of the nutritional meal. So I think even a hard charging athlete that's burning a lot of calories every day can exist in this feast or famine pattern. So when it's time to eat, you sit down, you're in an enjoyable, calm, relaxed setting. You eat to your heart's content, especially if you're athletic and you don't have to, concern yourself with your calorie intake versus your calorie burning. You're a solid this month, and you're going to be for the next month and the next month and the next year. Ben Greenfield's really touted this well, where he banks a lot of hours in a fasted or ketogenic state throughout the day. And then at nighttime, he turns us loose. He goes into the kitchen with his kids. His kids wrote a cookbook. They are all into creating concoctions. He says sometimes some of these things will be, pretty darn high carb, to the tone of 200 grams of carbs in one sitting. And so a guy like Ben, who is working out like a fiend on most days, he's not only going to get all these benefits of fasting and keto, but he's going to ensure that he reloads his glycogen tanks for the next day, because he's having these evening eating experiences that are indulgent. And so that's, I think, a nice way to kind of put together all these confusing insights and wondering what's best for you. But one thing I'll say is, trying to squeeze in a meal in a busy, hectic day where you're in kind of a stress mode, whether it's in the workplace or you're rushing off from work to the Solana Beach swim workout at noon, and then you're rushing back to work. That's probably not a great time for these large indulgent meals that require chewing and enjoyment and preparation. And so maybe, the evening is going to be your chance to enjoy a lot of calories. I just got back from Las Vegas, and we went to the Caesar's Palace world famous Bacchanal buffet. It's probably the single number one largest and most amazing buffet you'll ever find, with every kind of food and very, very top quality with top chefs. But our reservation was for 3:30 p.m. So guess what I did from the previous evening of an early dinner, probably at 4 or 5 p.m. I didn't eat a thing until 3:30 p.m. the next day. So that's what, a 23-hour fast. That's unusual for me because I'm an athlete and I'm making my smoothie most mornings, or I'm chowing on my gourmet dark chocolate indulgence, which I'm so fond of. So there's usually a chance for me to sit down and have some calories, but I purposely went all day so that I could enjoy this incredible feast. And we were there from 3:30 to 5. They kick you out after 90 minutes. And I didn't eat anything after that until late the next morning. So it's just an example of, a major feast or famine example. But I think that's something for a lot of us to consider, is you want to eat those meals when it's time to relax and enjoy.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I've had this thing of people eating because they're supposed to eat. Like, I got to hit my calories, got to get my macros. And it's like, well, are you hungry? Do you need that? And when is it, forcing it in if you're not even hungry? Is that necessary? But I think I call it intuitive eating, intuitive fueling, and training that you're figuring out, all right, I need to eat something now. This is when I should break my fast. And maybe I have a cup of bone broth. I like to add some truffle oil in it, or some ghee, and add a little fat and the sea salt. Or do I make a little shake? I've been into the Four Sigmatic protein shake because it has all the adaptogens in it. It's so good. But it is, learning how to listen as an athlete once you are fat adapted, and you're able to realize you're not just having cravings, but your body needs fuel, and pay attention to that. And then when are you good to sit, relax? Like I would say, if you're in Europe and you're having this nice, slow, leisurely lunch or meal, that you're not eating as fast as you can get back to work. So it's just figuring out, the timing, and that's the individualization of how to eat during the day when you are hungry, and then when you are able to eat and not multitask. So you're turning on that parasympathetic rest and digest. So you're not working and eating at the same time, but you're probably not parasympathetic helping that digestion system. So even if you're eating this great food, are you breaking it down properly? So for us, since COVID, our new work at home lifestyle, we eat typically around 2 p.m. in that window. And it should be a little slower eating than we do, because we do go back to work. So that's a challenge area of opportunity. But then I go lift weights usually at 5:30 at night, and I go to bed like at 8 o'clock at night. So I don't eat. I get up at 5. So I don't eat after that meal because I'm so full, because we do mostly protein at our lunch meal. I have enough time to digest it before I go lift. I'm not doing any high intensity workout at night. It's more just strength gain type of workout. And so I think it's, changing that up based on my activity schedule and my sleep wake schedule. So I can get that food broken down. But anyways, I think it's important to really, looking at fasting for athletes, when is it appropriate to break that fast? Or like you said, you're doing a all you can eat buffet in Vegas that you're going to not eat until you go have that meal and sit down and enjoy it, versus someone that's, got a full work schedule and cramming all this other stuff in and figure out when to eat then and get their right nutrients in.
Yeah. And I guess I should mention, the majority of people that I interact with, there's a huge goal out there of looking better and dropping excess body fat.
Yeah.
And we've been writing about that and targeting that goal with virtually every book as a major theme, because even the active population, I mean, we know from the triathlon community and from research, there was a famous study from the participants of the Cape Town, South Africa marathon. And it turns out 30% of them were classified as the overweight or obese category. This is marathon runners. So 30% of them are, their body composition is so far off the optimum that they're in that, danger category or that adverse category. And it's the exact same number, or very similar to the World Health Organization's estimate of the global population. So 30% of the population on the planet is overweight or obese category. Much more so in advanced society America, that number is 65%. 2/3 of Americans are overweight or obese. But the funny thing about the Cape Town Marathon study is that if you went and watched the marathon, you would be unable to discern between spectator and participant by their body composition. And that means something is wrong with that picture when the people that can run 26 miles look similar on the aggregate to the people standing on the roadside cheering for them. So when it comes to dropping excess body fat, I've become even more interested in this subject because as listeners can go listen to one of my most popular podcasts, the title is The Fatty Popcorn Boy Saga. And that was me, because I noticed inadvertently one day I stepped on the bathroom scale, which I hardly ever do, right? People know me as Brad Kearns, the former triathlete and now Masters ranked track sprinter. And I got my picture. There's my logo on the back if you're watching on YouTube. This lean, mean athletic machine my whole life. And somehow I added 10 pounds of body fat from my lifelong adult weight that's sitting there on my driver's license. And I stepped on the scale and it said 172. And I'm like, no, this has got to be wrong. But what had happened was, we wear shirts a lot. We look okay. The pants still fit, but it's easy to add 10 pounds of body fat. Yeah. So I had to go on a personal quest of all the crap that I've been writing about, but not really deeply connected to, because I'm just telling, do as I say. And, I'm fine in my own life because I've been a lifelong athlete. But even with a little inattention to indulgence and enjoyment of, lifestyle factors. And one of mine was popcorn. And so I make these amazing gourmet bowls of popcorn where I drizzle lemon flavored or lime flavored extra virgin olive oil and add a little melted butter and a lot of salt, and everyone loves it. So I make it for my family. And so we'd have these gatherings around the holidays or whatever, and I'd make these huge bowls of popcorn for people. And we'd enjoy, a table game or watching a show. And then what happened was I started making them every night because they're so good. And so I get this habit going, and then I get that habit going. And so I had to kind of look at myself in the mirror and go, okay, this is going to be fun. I'm going to take this challenge and drop excess body fat. And it's, there's no secret to it, but I had to tighten down the reins. And so I joke on the show that I was on the CNC diet. And this might be the title of my next book. You know what that stands for, Debbie?
CNC?
Yeah, CNC. That's what worked for me. I got 10 pounds off really quick, and it stands for carnivore and chocolate, because I love my dark chocolate, like I said. And then I had this carnivore-ish eating pattern where I was, mainly focused on those nutrient-dense meals like steak and eggs and fish, and a high animal-based strategy. And so I wasn't going out of my way to look for all these different menu items and enjoy my life to the maximum and go to the store and buy 27 different things. I was just hitting these go-to meals like my protein smoothies or having eggs or having steak and waking up the next day and doing it again and doing it again. And then, of course, enjoying my chocolate as my one and only thing that you would consider like a celebration food or an indulgence. And when I'm eating 85% dark chocolate or higher, it's a very satisfying snack that's not a high sugar thing. It has a lot of health benefits and it has minimal objections. But the point is, I narrowed my choices so narrow. And I also made this rule that I wasn't going to eat before 12 noon. And that was strictly not for some magical health benefit. It was strictly because I wanted to prove to myself that I could be disciplined and that I could stick to this sort of schedule. So the CNC diet worked really well. I got down to 162, which is my racing weight when I was a pro triathlete. That was, 25, 30 years ago. And it feels better living life at my optimal body composition, not because I'm trying to pick up more contracts for Instagram influencer model, but because I'm very focused on my athletic goals of sprinting and high jumping. And so I have this combination between the intrinsic value of looking and feeling great and also these extrinsic goals. Like I want to jump over a higher high jump bar. In fact, I'm going to keep going with my story because it's really important that I want people to have the right motivation and mindset when you're trying to drop excess body fat and look great. So it wasn't for folly. It was more for performance, but also everyone likes to look and feel better. But I hired this high jump coach. He's a former Olympic triple jumper from Russia. So a very high level athlete. And I was so happy to find out that he was in my town. So we had a private meeting, one-on-one coaching session. And I get to the track. I'm all excited to meet this guy, Victor. And I'm telling him how I used to be a triathlete and I trained really hard. And now I'm doing this and I eat really healthy. And he's listening. This is like 2 minutes after we met. We're just getting to know each other. And he's, very, personable guy, but he's also a pretty strict coach. And he's listening. And he says, "So are you going to reduce your body weight?" And I'm like, I guess so, if you say so, coach. And that was the first time someone's stepped up to me, Brad Kearns, former number 3 ranked world professional triathlete, and said, "Hey, you're going to get some of that fat off your body so you can perform better." And it was such a eye opener because I'm like, yeah, man, that's of course one of the major factors in how high you can jump. So I was very motivated and focused. I embarked on this journey. I narrowed my dietary choices and I narrowed my options. And of course, that's going to work for you. And guess what, people? You're going to be okay. You're going to survive when you eliminate these hyperpalatable modern foods that Rob Wolf talks about in his book, Wired to Eat, and Stephan Guyenet talks about in his book, The Hungry Brain, where we put together these hyperpalatable foods, which is sugar and fat together. They hijack the dopamine reward centers in the brain, and they make us want to eat more and more. What better example than popcorn? So we have the carbohydrate, the exploded surface carbohydrate, which has a higher glycemic response of popcorn or rice cakes or things like that. And then we add all that fat, and oh boy, is it delicious. So I'm here to put in a vote, a thumbs up for slapping some rules and restrictions on yourself, getting that body fat off your body so you're satisfied and you don't have to worry about it or have it in the background when you're shopping for more clothes because you're dancing around the issue. And for me, hitting that issue head on, I feel much better today, and I'm going to stay this way because I worked hard to get here. There's no 2 cents about that, but it's way better than messing with living a less than optimal life. And it's pretty, I shouldn't say easy, but it's pretty straightforward to get this job done instead of goofing around and talking around the issue.
So we need to finish up here, Sue, but I want to talk about your morning routine because years ago, you're starting the ice fridge, but I want to go back to what you said a while ago about the people at races being not so lean and strong and fit looking. And that's the reason we started this podcast 10 years ago, is to help you be fit and healthy from the inside out. John Smith and I started the Fit Fat Fast podcast, and I'm just trying to find the old archive videos or podcast episodes of that because we talked about all that 10 years ago because we'd go to marathons and you go to Ironmans and you see all these people that didn't lose any weight. And as a coach of athletes, I realized that years ago, people would go eat whatever they want because they just ran a long run on Sundays, and then they would eat the rest of the day. So I get that. And that's kind of what my focus is on this show, is help people be fit and healthy with the elements of the holistic method, because it's not just your exercising. It's obviously nutrition, as well as the stressors and the sleep hygiene routine, and how we start the day we'll get to next, and how we end the day to really optimize our health from all areas of our life. But the other thing I was going to say too is monthly pictures is what we started doing in January, and it's on my bikini sitting on my dresser. So I do that tonight because Neil and I started doing these monthly pictures because I'm taller. I hate weighing myself. It's just a depression for me. So I never really weigh myself. I rather look at my body fat level and being leaner. And we started lifting more weights this winter. And I think that's a great way to do little monthly swimsuit pose, keep them in your own little archive photo album, so you don't have blackmail.
Or Instagram, whatever you want, people, it's okay.
I did one just to show people how it's a good goal, and just to be authentic that this is me. It's an area of opportunity in the lower body. But the pictures really help to keep you motivated to know, okay, what are you doing? Is it helping you? Are you getting results that you are looking for? Because I think a lot of people struggle getting the desired results, trying to do all the right things they hear about, and they don't individualize all that information for themselves and pay attention to those red flags, when to course correct when they're doing something too much or too little, and finding the right amount for them. So that was my thought. And lastly, my other note was a Zoomer, Vibrant Wellness Zoomer. We did a podcast on my test results, but if you do it on corn, dairy, eggs, and wheat, you really learn more about motivation to avoid corn. For a lot of people, it's inflammatory food. So causing that irritation, gut wall lining, causing leaky gut, causing inflammation in all areas of your body, leading to who knows what. So if people are struggling eating popcorn at night, one good thing is to test and not guess if you are inflammatory to corn, because I had to stop eating popcorn. All right, so let's finish up. Brad Kearns, how do you start your day to make it the best day ever?
Oh my gosh, I think that's content for a whole nother show, because my morning exercise routine has really been life-changing. But briefly, I will say that I decided to put myself through a little bit of a sequence. This is now 5 years ago, because I realized when I did my most difficult workouts, my sprints and my high jumping, there wasn't really anything to approximate that in my other day-to-day activity schedule. You can't go and sprint a little bit every single day, right? But what I'd do is I'd be, whatever I was doing, my jogging, my strength training in the gym, and then I'd go out and slam these sprint workouts. I've been doing them for many years as I, trying to live the ancestral lifestyle and transition out of a strictly endurance experience that I did when I was younger. But I'd always be sore and stiff the next day, and that would last for a few days because the workout was so far beyond my basic baseline daily existence. So I said, what if I put something in there that would approximate the challenge of what happens when I face these really difficult, challenging, explosive workouts, and kind of elevate the platform from which I launch these formal high intensity workouts. And that's worked out really well. And yeah, I'd love to come back on and talk about all the benefits of that, because when you do something proactive to start your day, it takes you out of this disastrous category and these disastrous statistics where a recent survey showed that 84% of Americans do the exact same thing every morning. Do you know what it is, Debbie?
Watch the news.
Reach for their mobile device.
Oh, first thing in the morning?
Half of those people do it while they're still in bed. So I wish your phone was not within reach of your bed, because then you're getting some EMF and those things we talk about. But, ideally you'd plug it in outside of the room, unless you're my sister, who's a physician on call and maybe going to deliver a baby. So she has an excuse. She's got the phone by her bed and the ringer on maximum. But for the rest of us people, say goodbye to your phone at night. Ariana Huffington says, gently escort your device out of the room. And then in the morning, instead of reaching for that device and locking in to that reactive instant gratification brain mode, which is very difficult to extricate from. This is from psychological research. Dr. Nicole Bender's Hottie says, once you engage, it's very, very difficult to recover. So now all of a sudden you're in reactive high stress mode because you picked up your phone, you looked at your social media feed, you looked at your text messages, or you looked at the news. So instead, if you do something advocating for yourself and your commitment to exercise and healthy living, that can, alter the course of everything else you do throughout the day. And if it's just leashing up the dog and walking a lap around the block, oh my gosh, now you're honoring your commitment to take care of that animal in the proper way, because the dog deserves to get out as well. But if that's your first thing in the morning, that is an outstanding, progression from sitting there and reaching for the device.
So that's what I found years ago, not to look at email when I owned my fitness studio, because I had stressful emails at night, or I was coaching this crazy client for a long time that was the constant stress, and it would ruin my sleep because I'm like, oh my God. And I couldn't sleep. I had like relapse into adrenal fatigue issues because I'd look at these horrible emails at night as a business owner, that I finally, even more so since I moved and closed my business, that I can I don't look at my phone after 7:00. I go to the gym and come home and I don't even look at it. So I've learned to not text people when I get up in the morning, because I realized once I text them, when they responded, I'm like, oh my God, what are you doing up at 6 a.m.? You're not supposed to be looking at your phone. So I never even text people or use my phone in the morning till after I finished my workout and showered and able to focus on reading emails properly and sitting down and, being in that zone versus having these distractions that I think you get from your phone, and get that multitasking and turning on the stressors. And I'd rather start the day outside, get some fresh air. We go to the beach and run, or we go do something outside, if it's a walk or whatever it is, but just getting exposure to that sun. So we'll definitely have to do a part 2 on the ideal day, as I created hats that say Dawn Patrol San Diego that
Nice.
I got to order, because we love to be out, which Dawn Patrol, I learned being here, is the surfers are out first, dawn. And so we're the running group, Dawn Patrol. But anyways, getting that first sunlight in the morning is a magical time of day to start your day. So
excellent.
Brad, we'll have to have you on part 2, because we didn't even get close to the other questions on the ice tub and how you're doing that. I know Jimmy Moore is doing it all the time. And I said in my intro, we'll talk about that. So the intro I recorded for this podcast will go to part 2 that we didn't get to it. So I'll have to schedule another show and talk about ice bath, and when are you doing it too much? When is it appropriate? I'm reading Dr. James Nicola, his book, When, and I just finished his chapter on cold and hot, and now talking about nutrition, timing, and everything. So great book to look up all the research on cold and hot therapy for athletes.
Nice.
So thank you, Brad. And why don't you give everyone, plug your show and what you're up to next?
Thanks. You can go listen to the Be Rad podcast and go look for the Debbie Potts episode if you search the archives. But I have a lot of fun on that show. Great guests. And I also do breather shows, I call them, where I'm just talking directly about a certain healthy lifestyle tip with a lot of takeaway insights. So you can get a mix of feature length interviews, as well as just me slamming you with the instructions about this or that. And bradkearns.com. I mentioned that free resource, the Carnivore Scores food rankings chart, and there's other PDFs and good stuff you can gather up there. So I love to connect with people, and so great to be back on your show. Wow, you've been going strong for a decade. Super impressive. Keep it up.
I don't know how, but trying to look over the past 10 years, just what's evolved, and how we were talking about metabolic efficiency and maffetone and carb fasted workouts before they had a term for it all. So it's 10 years evolved. So are you at Paleo FX this year? Any conferences? Are you traveling?
Oh yeah, I forgot. We're traveling again and meeting in
busy.
public. Oh my gosh. I'm sure everyone's going to be triple excited, more than normal, just to gather. Wow.
Or I know a lot of people who are not going to conferences, like Brad or Rob Wolf is saying, he got, and I think Ben's not traveling as much either, because they got used to not having to be gone every weekend from home and actually enjoy the home life that they have missed out on for so long. So
yeah, for sure.
Where are you going to be?
I don't have big plans for meeting in person, but I think it's important to keep that healthy balance. And of course, I've been doing my own thing for so long. I never had the commute to work, but I did feel like it was the most ridiculous inefficiency of modern life when you look at the freeway and everyone's going 10 to get to some big building on time. And I'm like, come on, it doesn't make sense. And so now finally I've been vindicated that, the self-designed life where you go and do the workout when you want to, rather than at 5:30 a.m. because you have to rush off to the office. Now people can really experience what it's like. And there were so many tragic things with the quarantine and the people that succumbed to misfortune. But one of my positive notes that I remember when COVID first started was that my recreation areas, my trail down the levee and my outdoor activity that's so familiar to me, I started to notice way more people out there early on during quarantine, including families, parents with their kids. And I was so happy, and I'd smile and say hi to everybody, because usually I'm out there by myself, right? But now it's like, hey, welcome to the trail. Isn't it great out here? And so that I thought was a positive aspect of the major life disruption across the globe, that people were taking the advantage of going out and enjoying time together and all those good things.
Yeah, definitely. I know we didn't really realize half the time that there was something going on, because we go running and biking and swimming, that it was just, normal.
Yeah, right.
Seeing people down at the beach and all that. So,
Yeah.
all right, guys. So find Brad and we'll listen to B-Rad podcast, and I'll get everyone to put the links in the show notes so you can find all the great resources. So thanks, Brad.
Thanks, Debbie.